Hey everybody. So I think we're going to get started because we do have a lot to go over today, and we want to provide as much information as we can for you today because it's important stuff that we want to share with you. But thank you all for coming to Being Safe Online. First, I just want to introduce you to your host today. My name is Debbie. I am the Community Technology Specialist at the Millbrae Library, and I'm happy to go over some basic online safety tips for you. We also have two more hosts for you. I'm going to pass it on to Kaja first.
Hey everybody, my name's Kaja. I work at the Millbrae Library, and I'm very excited to talk to you about online safety or cybersecurity. And I'm also joined by my colleague, David Vargas. Hey, David.
Hi, Kaja. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. I'm David Vargas. I work for San Mateo County Libraries. You may have seen me at the Belmont Library, and I'm a community technology specialist. And I am also very excited that we get to talk to you about cybersecurity during Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So I hope you all have a wonderful time with us today. And I'm going to pass this right back to Debbie. Thank you.
All right, thanks, David. Yes, like he mentioned, it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so hopefully we're going to learn a lot of good tips to keep yourself secure. This is basically just a very broad overview of how connected we really are to the internet and steps that you can take to keep your information as private as you'd like, depending on your own comfort levels. And we'll show you some cybersecurity best practices and steps that you can take to increase online safety. This class is based on a training that we took back in April. It was presented by Blake Carver, all about cybersecurity. So we're proud to pass on that great information that we received from that training. So just a little bit of housekeeping first. If you'd like to access our live closed captions for this event, just click on that CC icon in your Zoom toolbar. Also, if you do have questions, feel free to place them in the chat whenever you have them, or you can wait till the end of the program to ask them out loud if you'd like. Also, note that we are recording this program, so if you're not interested in being shown on a recording on YouTube, it may be a good idea to turn off your camera at this point. Okay, so we do have a lot of information to cover, so without further ado, let's get started. And first up, we have Kaja, who's going to give us some background on cybersecurity.
Hi, everybody. First thing I want to talk about is really a clarification, the difference between privacy and security. We're talking about cybersecurity, and what that is really your ability and the ability of the companies you choose to associate with or sign up with to protect your private information. Privacy, on the other hand, while related, is about your ability to control what information is shared, what you choose to keep private, and what you choose to share. For example, social media. Do you want to share where you live? Do you want to share when you're going on vacation? That's hopefully up to you, and your control over your privacy is a very important issue. Now, the place where they meet is that information which you want to be private. Usually I think mainly of financial information. We do not want to share our bank account numbers, our personal information like our address or where we live, passwords to our accounts. This is information we want to keep private to ourselves, and security is about how we protect that information. So let's talk a little bit about this word cybersecurity. What is it? Why is it needed? And who on a national level oversees it? Cybersecurity, the technical definition from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a department of the Department of Homeland Security, their definition is the art of protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use, and the practice of ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. That's basically your ability to access your information without it being taken by other people. That's cybersecurity, and it can operate on an individual level or a business level. The reason it's needed is because information is valuable. Your information allows me to potentially access all of your valuables, like your online valuables, like your account information. If this is scary to mention, but it's important to note, if I'm a burglar, it's very helpful for me to know when you're not home. So if you're on vacation and I see on your social media that you're going off to Bora Bora, that might be a good time to go take a look at your house and see what valuables you have. The other reason it's important is because when you're connected, anyone could potentially access the information that you put online, including where you pay your rent or what sort of special information you want to access online. The other reason cybersecurity is important is because there are people, both good and bad, trying to find ways to get your information. So the bad people, which I'm going to use as this guy over here, this is going to be our example of the bad hacker guy. This guy is always trying to find ways around the security, like, you know, your antivirus and your passwords. He's always trying to find ways in there. And then the good hackers, the ones who, you know, work for companies, those people are always trying to find ways to defend your information. So they always, it's a evolving battle where one person figures out ways around a block, and then the good people make the stronger blocks, and it just keeps evolving. So you always need professionals and experts working on this to make sure that information is secure, because the threats always get stronger. We briefly mentioned who oversees cybersecurity, and we mentioned CISA as like the highest level on a government level. They're from the Department of Homeland Security. The other security agencies as well, like the FBI and NSA, do jump in. Cybersecurity job titles, those might be the people who protect the cybersecurity at your job or jobs of the companies you sign up with, like Facebook, Instagram, or Bank of America, for example. And that can be the Chief Information Security Officer, Security Analyst, or one of the most interesting professions, an ethical hacker or a penetration tester. These are the good hackers who try to find the vulnerabilities in information before the bad hackers get to them. And yeah, we want to talk a little bit about vulnerabilities. So let's jump into that. First, we want to ask a question, and if you have an idea or an answer, you can place your answer in the chat. In addition to the usual personal computers and mobile devices like your smartphone or a laptop, what are some other items that you can think of in your home or anywhere else that are connected to the internet? Just pop your answers in the chat there so we can kind of just get an idea. All right, David said a thermostat. Any other things that are connected to the internet? Wireless speakers, that's a great example, yeah. Well, a lot of times speakers, they can get to, sometimes there can be vulnerabilities in Bluetooth devices. So that is a great example, thank you. Wireless printers, it's a really good example too. Any ones with friendly female names? Yeah, Echo, Alexa, Google Assistant. Yeah, great ideas. There's a lot of items today that can be connected to the internet. You want to take it to the next slide? And the reason we're mentioning this is because when you know what's connected to your internet or what is just connected in general, you will be much better able to keep your internet secure because you know that this device could potentially be hacked. This device could potentially be hacked. So you may have heard the phrase Internet of Things, and these are kind of all those things we're talking about, the non-traditional internet connected items like Alexa and Google Assistant. I have one of these at my house. Please don't hack me. A smart fridge, temperature monitoring systems like David mentioned, video game consoles. Most video games nowadays are online. You have to have an online account to even play in a lot of cases. And network connected toys. The advantages to these things is usually that they can be updated, but of course the downside is one of the reasons they need to be updated is because sometimes they find vulnerabilities in these systems. I don't have a source for this quote, but I did find this on the internet. Anything with a processor and an internet connection can be hacked. So that's always a good thing to keep in mind when it comes to Internet of Things. Why hack your email? So let's talk a little bit about email. Email is one of the best places for a hacker to attack because email is often connected to a lot of your accounts. If a hacker can get control of your email and change your password, that means they'll be able to not only control like your email account, but also a bunch of your social media accounts, because often email is a way to reset all of your other passwords on all your other accounts. They also can access your contacts and personal info, so they can start posing as you and talking to your friends and asking them, hey, can you send me $50 by Venmo? I'm really stuck in this situation. Thanks, buddy. Posing as you. That's why your email is a really ideal source for the attackers to come in and try and take control of that. So just be aware of that. Your email, you really want to try and secure that. Another place that is a great target for gathering information and other things is social media. Just like your email, if they get hold of your social media, they can pose as you. They can also make a spoof account or a duplicate account that looks just like your account and reach out to friends. Maybe some of you have seen someone who's already your friend on Facebook or Instagram, and suddenly they have a friend request for you and it seems kind of strange. That's often somebody kind of posing as you or someone you know. Social media can also be used as a vehicle to transport malware, just like a bad computer virus. You click on a link and then suddenly your computer is infected. So social media is a place where that can happen. Again, we talked before about being on vacation or sharing information where you live or where you're going. It's just a good idea to kind of be aware what you are sharing. And if you have accounts that are unattended, that's also a great target for a hacker, because they love to take over accounts that no one's monitoring, and because they can do whatever they want without someone reporting it or changing the password. So those are some social media vulnerabilities.
There's a good question in the chat. When wireless is turned off, does that mean hackers cannot access your information?
Yes and no. It depends on, if you turn off wireless, you may still be connected another way. Like maybe your device might be tethered to your computer, or maybe you also, like for example, if you turn off wireless on a video game console, but like me, you have a wired connection, that might be a place where, by wired, I mean like a phone cable plugged into the device, which sometimes helps for stability. So it depends on what device you're using and what other ways it's connected to the internet.
I'd also add on, or you want to say, David?
Yeah, just one thing. I think, like Kaja was mentioning, when you turn off wireless, what you're actively doing, it would be hard for a hacker to see what you're surfing the web and browsing. But you can't forget about your accounts that you have, so you can be completely shut off for the night. But if someone's trying to hack into your email account, let's say it's with Google or Yahoo, they could still try to log in and access your information that way, even if you turned everything off. Those accounts are still up and connected to the internet because it's on Google's side of things. So that's an area where I'd say that you wouldn't have any kind of control over, even if you turned off everything in your house, your modem and your router. I'll pass it off to you, Debbie, if you want to add on.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, if you've shared your information on other external websites or to another company, they might have that stored somewhere. And if they get hacked, that's how your information can also be accessed, unfortunately. So, if you're like always disconnected, like forever and ever, then yeah, sure, you're probably going to be pretty protected. But the more you share out on the internet, the more vulnerable you probably are too.
Really great points, David and Debbie.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're gonna. Still Kaja. Keep
Yeah,
going.
just one more here. Just real quick. So one of the things you want to do is just be aware of what you share. Do take a look at your privacy and security settings on any of your social media accounts. That can allow you to control who you share information with, and also just learn how to use the features like block and how to report people. If people are harassing you, or obviously trying to pose as you, then you can report it and block people from trying to add you. And Just be aware of unknown friend requests. I like to stick to people I actually know in real life. It's really up to you how comfortable you are with sharing, but just be aware so that you know how to control these things and your privacy settings. And then I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, David.
Thank you so much, Kaja. So continuing on the line or topic of vulnerabilities, one that is a catch-22 more or less is public Wi-Fi, I'd say. So we are so used, it's 2021, we're so used to having public Wi-Fi, be it at public libraries, coffee shops, hotels, airports, gyms, brick and mortar shops. The one thing we all think about, I think in the moment, is I need access to information. I need to sign into my account, so I'm going to use public Wi-Fi to get there. But the one thing that we have to remember, and this is mentioned by Allison Grace of Norton LifeLock, is users are especially at risk when connected to a wireless network that uses outdated encryption protocols. So I think that's the one thing I know I don't necessarily think of, like when I'm at the airport or if I'm at a hotel, is the infrastructure that's supplying the public Wi-Fi, is it up to date? Are their encryption protocols up to date to keep me safe? So whatever I'm looking at while I'm on the internet, do I have that layer of encryption that's kind of scrambling the information that I'm looking at? And I think that's the kind of the trade-off. Like, you have the convenience of being free and accessible, but you also want to think, okay, is the infrastructure secure? So if I'm handling sensitive transactions on Wi-Fi, is my information safe right there in that moment? So we will go on to the next slide. Oh, sorry, let's take it back one slide. I apologize. All right, so some things that you could think of is, I would say, I would look into avoid accessing sensitive data on public Wi-Fi, like your bank account or whatnot. That's my feedback. If you are to be using public Wi-Fi, if you have access to a VPN, a paid virtual private network, that can provide you with a layer of encryption. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. And just make sure that you sign out of any account that you're using. So an example would be, let's say you're at a public library and you brought your laptop in and you're using the library's Wi-Fi, and you determine that the information that you're going to be gathering and even sharing is okay for public Wi-Fi at the library. I'd say be aware of your surroundings and make sure that if you're going to be taking a restroom break or stepping away from the computer to move around for a little bit, that you sign out of everything. I think it's just a good practice. You just never know. I mean, even at home, I think it could be a good practice as well. If you're going to have guests over or whatnot, that you're making sure that you're logging out of your operating system while you step away, because it sure is tempting, I think, for anyone. They see a computer open with the internet, they might want to just jump on and browse, and they might actually be affecting something, or they might encounter something sensitive that you're looking at. So something to think about. But yeah, we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you, Debbie.
There's another quick question in the chat. If I encrypt my folders, will hackers be able to access the folders?
I think that's an extra layer of protection that you're going to be equipped with when it comes to encrypting folders. I know with backup drives and things like that, you can also encrypt those to make the contents harder to access. So I think it's something well worth looking into if you have some really sensitive items living on your computer or whatever it may be. All right, so another fun question, and this is an activity we'd like for you all to put your answers in the Zoom chat. Can you name any common cybersecurity threats? Maybe some that you've heard about in the news, or some you may have even encountered or heard of other people encountering. We'll give you about 10, 15 seconds to put your answers in the chat. All right, so we have worms mentioned by Kaja. You are absolutely right, Kaja. And we'll give anyone else about 5 more seconds before we move on. McAfee security, yeah, you could definitely use that to protect yourself from cybersecurity threats. McAfee would be a great application to use. Okay, so we're going to move forward. So let's talk about malware. That's a vulnerability. So according to CISA, malware is unwanted files or programs that can cause harm to a computer or compromise data stored on a computer. So let's take a look in this next slide at the various forms of malware. So we have Trojan horses. Trojan horses are pieces of software that can steal sensitive data, often looking for financial and personal information. Then we have viruses. Viruses are stored on a file and will appear when the user opens them up. So if you downloaded files from the internet and you decide I'm going to launch this file on my computer, you have to be be cautious because there could be a virus installed. And maybe that's from a sender that you don't know of, or maybe an iffy website that you visit. So be very careful with those downloads that you open up. Worms. Worms can replicate and infect multiple computers on a network. So meaning if you were at your house and let's say you have, within your household, you have maybe 3 or 4 computers that are all connected to the same network. If one computer opened up a file and a worm was launched, that worm could use the network to go to other computers and cause a lot of problems with anyone in your household connected to that network. Same thing with the business, the library, we have, many computers connected to the same network. So that could be devastating to, businesses and households, those worms. And then last, spyware. Spyware secretly gathers information like your web browsing data. So we'll go to the next slide and talk about ways that proactive ways you could recover from this. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but I want to advocate for having a computer image saved somewhere to like a backup drive. And basically that captures everything on your operating system, all your applications. If you had something like that in place, you'd be able to recover from a malware attack. Anti-malware tools, which we'll talk about a little later. And yeah, so that is, one last personal experience. I believe I suffered from a malware attack about 10 to 12 years ago and lost everything on my computer. I had to reformat and reinstall the computer, and all the sensitive documents that I was working on at the time, they were all gone. And it was a learning experience for me. So now I have a nice backup drive and I back up the important files that mean the most to me. Well, I'm going to pass it up to Debbie, and Debbie's going to continue to talk to us about vulnerabilities.
Yep.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, David. Next kind of piece of malware is ransomware, which you may have heard about in the news recently. Ransomware is a type of malicious software or malware that prevents you from accessing your computer files, systems, or networks and demands you pay a ransom for their return. That's according to the FBI. And here's an example of a type of ransomware pop-up. And this is an actual one from 2017. It was a big one called WannaCry. It's from the WannaCry group. And they launched ransomware attacks on a lot of different organizations, including like hospitals in England, if you may remember, and that rendered, they couldn't the hospitals couldn't access like patient information, and so that means they had to turn away a lot of patients, and that's horrible because it's a hospital. And most recently, you probably heard of like the Colonial Pipeline being a victim of ransomware, which caused a big kind of disruption in the gas distribution, and that caused like gas prices to go up. And this was back in May, I think. Not too long ago. It's a growing problem, and it's hard because a lot of these businesses feel like their hands are tied and they have to pay the ransom, which gives these malicious attackers to more incentive to do more of this ransomware. And so what should we do to avoid ransomware or any type of malware actually is, just don't open any links or hyperlinks from unknown senders. that can always be, we'll show some examples of this, but it could, be a way to trick you into either downloading something malicious or getting your information. Don't download any attachments. Again, that's, especially from senders that you're not familiar with. Adopt a zero trust mindset when it comes to emails from unknown senders. There's a ongoing theme here. And assume that the content may be malicious, at least initially. So it's unfortunate that we have to kind of have this, very distrustful mindset when it comes to these emails. But it's an unfortunate truth because there's so many malicious actors out there who are trying to use, these easy ways to try to get, information out of just anybody. So I'm going to move on to another type of topic, which is phishing. Hopefully you've heard of this before, but it's basically, they're fake emails or telephone calls or text messages. And phishing messages often appear to come from known sources with familiar names, logos, and screenshots. So it might be like from your local bank, but it really isn't your local bank. The more familiar a message looks, the more susceptible people may be to performing actions suggested in the message. So let's see some examples of this. For example, this one is from the IRS. But is it really from the IRS? What we want to do is kind of identify some red flags that make you suspicious of the email. For example, in this first one, we look at the sender's email address, and here it's at irxt.com. Like that doesn't have anything to do with IRS. So for me, that would be a red flag. It would, to me, I know that the website is irs.gov. So, this doesn't match up with what I know already. And then you also see that it has a little link there that says get started. And it's, inviting you to click on this link and try to enter your information. So what you want to do is avoid this email, delete it if you feel like it's suspicious. But what happens if you do click on that link? You may be brought to a website that looks something similar to this. And it's like, oh, it looks like it's the IRS. And oh, I guess I can enter my social security number and my credit card information. And then all of a sudden, boom, these malicious actors have your very personal information. Again, the ways that we can identify that this is not a real website is we look at that address bar. This one says www.subafrique.com. Like, what does that even mean? Does that have anything to do with IRS? I don't think so. It just does not look like a typical website that I would expect from the IRS. And then, if you did fall for it in seconds, the phisher could get sensitive information and passwords, which can be really dangerous. Here's another example of a phishing email. And, if you see grammatical errors and typos, that's another sign that it's probably a fake email. So in this case, it's missing some apostrophe or maybe some articles. To me, that would be a red flag. And I've read, something in the past that said, a lot of these phishing emails often do have these grammatical errors and typos. It's not because the hackers are not good in English or they don't know grammar too well. I've heard that they do this on purpose to prey on people who might not catch that and might not be as smart to realize that it is a phishing email. So just be a little bit more on alert when you get these types of emails. And again, it has that telltale link that they want you to click on to get whatever information, or it might be a downloading a piece of malware. And then here's another one where if you are tempted to click on that link, but you don't know where it goes, there is a way to tell you where it does go. Is if you hover over the link in the bottom left corner of your browser, you should see where that link will go to. just don't click on it first. Just hover over it, and then you should see the address of where it goes to. And if it has anything to do with, like for example, this is a Nokia email. If it goes to nokia.com, then maybe it's valid, but if it doesn't, then it's probably invalid and you don't want to click on it. Again, there's that telltale link to click on. Another new kind of phishing that you may have experienced as of late is called smishing, aka text message phishing. So you might have gotten text messages that look very similar to this, where again, they have a link on there and they want you to click on it so that they can get your information. Usually they come in the form of like, you won a prize, click here to claim your prize, or something's wrong with your account, click here to fix your account. Again, you want to have that kind of zero trust mindset with these types of text messages, because most likely they're scams. Again, if it's, especially if you don't contact them, they usually don't contact you through text messages. So be aware of that and don't click on those links, please. So what do you do when you do receive a phishing email? There's what you want to do. If you find something that's fishy, just delete it right away and do not open it. If you want to verify a suspicious email, for example, like you're not sure if it's a real or not, you can call the sender of the organization directly, but don't assume that any number provided in the email is valid. So for example, you got an email from Bank of America and you're a Bank of America customer and they say that your account is, something's wrong with your account. Again, don't contact anyone through that email, but you can call them separately, look up their phone number on their website and then call them separately and ask them directly, is there something wrong with my account? I got a weird email, and then they can tell you whether or not, something is actually wrong. Okay, and then now I kind of want to show you another type of scam that has happened. It's called the computer technician scam. And I'll just show you a video. It's about 4 minutes, and it kind of demonstrates the scam. I know I've known several victims of this scam. So hold on one second. Let's play it here.
The Today Show host that just fell for it.
You're surfing the web, and out of nowhere,
important security message.
This scary warning pops up saying your system has been infected, it's been hijacked, and your private and financial data is at risk. And the only way to fix it? Call the number on the screen. It looks legit, like it came from your own computer, but it's actually a fake. It's really a pop-up ad.
I just opened the door and just let somebody into my computer.
It just happened to Natalie while she was online. She panicked and called the number.
They told me that they're a reputable company, that they work with Apple and with Microsoft. So they immediately asked for access to my computer through LogMeIn123.
Please tell me you did not do that.
I know I shouldn't have done that.
You did it. You let him in.
Yes,
No.
I did it, Jeff. I know.
Once inside, they scanned her hard drive, telling her she has a virus. But good news, for $400, they'll fix it.
It was sort of like the light bulb went off, because I knew at that point what they were offering wasn't true.
Security experts say these pop-up ads are misleading and dangerous.
It looks like a warning, but it's not real. It's just a picture telling you that there's something wrong with your computer, but there's not actually something wrong with your computer.
All right, we're going to try this for ourselves. We're going to call one of the companies that sends those pop-up warnings. Went to the store, bought a brand new MacBook Air laptop, and you can see it's right out of the box. We brought our computer expert in, Jim Stickley, here. If they tell us over the phone there's a virus on this, what does that mean?
It means they're trying to rip us off, or even worse, they might be trying to put their own malware on.
All right, so I'm going to get my phone, and we're going to call them up. I saw a pop-up that said to call this number about a computer virus. Can you help me? Okay.
Yeah, I can help you.
The technician immediately asked to tap into my computer, and once he's in, we watch him poke around my laptop in real time. That's him doing all that, and within seconds, he has bad news.
Yeah, it's a virus, and maybe someone else is trying to access your computer.
That's right. He says not only is there a virus on my computer, somebody is trying to hack in.
I'm going to clean up this machine.
and make this computer a brand new computer the day you bought this computer.
But remember, this computer is brand new. Then comes the sales pitch.
What does this cost me to get fixed?
If you go for a 1-year contract, it will cost you $199.9.
Time for the big reveal.
My name is Jeff Rawson. I'm the National Investigative Correspondent for NBC News. And this is a brand new computer, just out of the box.
Okay, I completely agree with your point. Completely agreed. Okay, I'm not denying with it.
Show me the virus. Where's the virus?
I'll show you the virus.
You were trying to sell us a package that our computer expert says we did not need. It's a brand new computer.
Sir, I'm not trying to sell any package. I'm providing you technical assistance. Just give me a minute. Let me show you.
After several minutes, he still can't show us any virus. And then watch this. He starts surfing the web.
You're typing yahoo.com into Google. Can you let go of the remote connection? Thank you very much for your time.
It doesn't matter whether you're smart or dumb or you're old or young. It just is one of those things where when you're caught off guard, you'll fall for it.
An urgent warning to protect you from becoming a victim.
I've learned a good lesson. Next time my gut says, what would Jeff Rawson do? Run.
Always good advice, Nat. These technicians can be persistent, by the way, as Natalie found out, but no matter how official they sound.
Okay. So that's a very common occurrence where, you know, you get that pop-up that says that you need to call this phone number to, you know, take away the pop-up and also to fix your computer, even though there's nothing wrong. Just don't call that number. So again, what do you do if you get that pop-up warning and you can't get rid of it? First of all, don't call the number. And if you have a PC, you want to do what's called is force quit the browser, or you know, you kind of just like you're forcing your browser to close down so that you can get rid of that message. And so what you do on a PC is do good old Control-Alt-Delete, which opens the task manager. And then you want to click on your browser. So if you're using Chrome, then you click on that and you click on End Task, and that will close up the browser. And then also, if you're on a Mac, the command there is Command Option Escape, and then it's called Force Quit Applications. So that's what you want to do if you ever happen to see that pop up. Has anybody ever seen that pop up? I'm kind of curious. Any questions at the moment? No? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so I'm going to pass this back to Kaja, I believe.
All right, everybody, let's look at some lines of defense. And always your first line of defense is your passwords, of course, right? That's the password only you should know. So let's look at some data from the most common passwords of 2020, according to NordPass. Now, if we look in the second column, we can see a listing of some of the most popular passwords. Most of them are pretty bad. They're just sequences of numbers, or, you know, the password is password. Whoa. But one thing I do want you to pay attention to is the fourth column where it says time to crack it. Most of these are less than a second. And then the last column, times exposed, shows how many times they were able to kind of break these passwords. You know, how many times they were just able to just get right in there and get into that account. But an interesting thing, if we look at the third line, picture one. So that's a word that is known, but it has a numeral in it as well. And in a sea of passwords that took less than a second to crack, even this basic password with just one numeral and some text characters took 3 hours versus 1 second for some pretty low effort. What that tells me is that the more complexity you add to your password, the harder it's going to be, seemingly exponentially, to protect your accounts. So complexity is key. You probably know a lot of these. The reason I want to kind of go over them is to just emphasize that this really does help. The complexity of your passwords really does help. So how do we slow down the bad hacker? Make it as long as possible. And that can mean putting spaces in between things. That can mean putting dashes. Just try to add a lot of length to your your password, even if it has to be something that uses words, which is not advised. But if you want to use words, at least put some spaces in between those words and make it long, like almost like a phrase or a sentence. Do not, and I repeat, do not reuse your passwords on multiple sites. You can make a really hard password, but if a hacker concentrates all their attention on breaking that password and they get it somehow, then they have access to everything you have because you only used one password. So try to avoid that if possible. It's kind of like getting control of your email, just accessing everything. You may have been advised this before by some people, but putting letters in place of words, especially like in a conventional way, for example, I used a 3 instead of an E. Most hackers, in fact, most people are aware of that convention, and they can break that pretty easily. There's literally programs that do that. They don't even have to do like hacking. They can just kind of run a program. In fact, that's what a lot of hacking is. Some letters in your password, and just if you alternate the case, that really throws programs and people for a loop because passwords are case sensitive, and guessing which ones are uppercase or lowercase, even for a computer program running off statistics, can be quite difficult. Using some numbers, we saw how Picture 1 made it a lot harder for NordPass to crack those passwords. And having special characters like an ampersand, that's that A you see in emails, or the percentage sign, any of those really, really helps keep your password strong. And one that even I forget sometimes, and I love thinking about password stuff, but spaces. Spaces are great, and having even irregular spaces like 2 spaces and 1 spaces. If you can keep track of that somehow, then that's a really good way to strengthen your passwords. If this stuff is all too overwhelming in terms of remembering different passwords for your accounts, you do have the option of using a password manager, which my colleague Debbie is going to talk about right now.
Thank you, Kaja. So yeah, what is a password manager? You can kind of just think of it as a vault or a safe, and you can put you can put all your passwords in here. You can put credit card information if you want. You can just like secure notes. You can put all things in this one vault, and all you would need is the combination or the master password to open up this vault, and then you would have access to everything that's inside. So this is an example of a password manager. I believe this one is called 1Password, and you can see, this one has a like different like logins. It also has like a credit card. So once you open up this password manager, what you can do, how you can use it is like you can copy the password that you have saved in it, and then you can paste it into the website login. Or oftentimes password managers will let you autofill for you. So you just push a button that's your password manager provides, and then it'll autofill for you, and it's amazing. It can make things logging in so much easier, because like what Kaja mentioned is that you should never reuse any passwords, but for most of us that's a lot of passwords. We have a lot of accounts, using a password manager can allow us to have a different password for every single account that we do have, and we know we have so many. If you are interested in a password manager, these are some that have been recommended. For example, 1Password and Bitwarden on the left. Those are 2 password managers that are recommended by the New York Times consumer website called Wirecutter. 1Password is a paid service. I'm a customer of it myself. It's like maybe $2 or $3 a month. But then also there's also Bitwarden, which is a free open source password manager. That's also a good choice if you want to consider one. Dashlane and LastPass also get good marks for password managers. So anytime you are shopping for a password manager, just make sure that they are reputable and they have a good security reputation. Because if they don't have a good reputation for security, then you're basically, putting all of your passwords into a bad service. You may be wondering if is having a password manager really all that safe and secure? Like, what if, would you use password managers for sensitive instances like online banking, email, Amazon.com, or where you make purchases? What do you guys think? Do you have an opinion about whether, some people might argue that, putting all your eggs in one basket is probably not a good idea. And we all have different comfort levels. Does anybody have an opinion on using a password manager at all? Maybe no opinion. Yeah, David says for non-sensitive accounts. So we did ask this particular question to Blake Carver, who was the one who trained us on cybersecurity, and he gave this answer where you can use a password manager for everything except for your email. So your email address password, you want to keep that in your head, or keep it safe so that it can never be accessed anywhere else, because again, like Kaja mentioned before, that if somebody hacks into your email, that's like cascades into a lot of trouble, because they can get access to a lot of your other accounts too. So that's what Blake Carver recommended. Or there's another way to do it. If you don't feel comfortable putting all your eggs in one basket, maybe put your eggs in two baskets. So you can use one for shopping and banking, and then you can use another one for social media and whatnot. I see a question about can password managers be hacked too? The ones that have a good reputation, they haven't been hacked. Although LastPass, I did mention that one in the slide. They did have a breach at one point. I think in like 2017, I want to say. So they said that no passwords were accessed. I'm not exactly sure what was in the breach, but still a lot of people's accounts were still safe, because even the password management company, they don't know your passwords. They don't have access to them at all. All your passwords are encrypted, or in other words, they're like scrambled, and only you have the tool to unscramble your password. You're the only one who has access to your passwords. So even the password management company doesn't have access to them. There's another question about if a password's been hacked, what happens? Well, what you should do if you find that your password has been hacked, or your account has been hacked, you should immediately change your password, and then save it into your password manager, the updated one, and yeah, just immediately change it. Okay, I guess I'll move on. Still have much to go. So I'm going to pass it back to David.
Thank you, Debbie.
Mm-hmm.
This is just kind of to recap what I talked about earlier in the area of public Wi-Fi, but just remember to log out or lock your computer. I'd say if your computer doesn't have a sign-in or like a login where you input a username, or sorry, not username, but credentials like a password, you should consider adding that on, especially if you're taking that computer with you to public places, just because, oftentimes you can set these computers to, after 5 minutes, to kind of time out, and you'll be asked to type in or rekey that password to get back in. I think that's something, a good practice to have. But just remember, when you're at home, you just never know if you have visitors around, or maybe young people in your household that could jump onto your computer. You want to be aware of what you have, and not necessarily in the sense of, it's like kind of yes and no in terms of privacy. I mean, the people in your household you probably trust, but maybe it's just documents that you're working on that you don't want someone to close out of a browser or an application. In that sense, signing out of your computer will protect you from losing any of that kind of information. And then the opposite's true in public. You have people around, you're unaware of who could be snooping in on you. So if you're stepping away, you definitely want to sign out so no one can access your account. And then with public computers at the library, I know for San Mateo County libraries, we have a icon on the desktop that allows you to delete all your information that you've downloaded. So if you're using a public computer, getting into the practice of deleting anything that you downloaded, clearing out any kind of history of information that you've been worked on would be a good practice as well. And we'll move on to the next slide. Update, update, update. Most active services, most services that are active will be working on finding bugs and vulnerabilities and then fixing them. So, if you have applications installed and maybe some new cyber threat popped up that makes that application vulnerable, a lot of the times the developers for that application manufacturer will work on releasing updates to make sure you're secure. I know one not too long ago happened for Google Chrome. So for any of those Google Chrome users here, you want to make sure that your Google Chrome is up to date. We got an email from our IT department for the library system saying, there's this new vulnerability with Google Chrome, make sure it's up to date. And it was a really simple solution in the settings of Google Chrome. So I think across the board, applications, web browsers, things like that, make sure that they are up to date. I will say one thing about updating. One thing to consider is, let's say you use your computer for a variety of applications. You want to make sure that those applications can accommodate the update that you make. Sometimes, like with Apple, when they release the latest iteration of their operating system, sometimes you'll get emails from those software manufacturers saying, we are working on releasing an updated version of our software that's compatible with Apple's latest operating system. So I think that'd be the only caveat on maybe waiting a tiny bit. Just if you're heavily relying on some of those softwares, you want to make sure that they will work with the latest update to Windows or Apple's operating system. Okay, so let's talk about, and then that's just another look at operating systems, browsers, and apps again, of what needs to be updated. So we're going to move on to backing your files up, or quote unquote, back that file up. There's a variety of tools that you can use when it comes to backing up your computer. The picture, we're seeing a USB flash drive. Those can be really handy, and a small USB drive can now accommodate a terabyte or 2 terabytes worth of information. So there's a lot of storage in something quite small that could potentially be used to back up your, maybe a system image, or just a lot of important files that you have. Maybe they're video files or photos. You could also use some of the more traditional approaches in the past, like CDs. CDs have a certain amount of storage capability where you could store things on CDs if you don't have a USB drive or you prefer storing a CD. Same thing with DVD, except you have a lot more room that you can fit information on or documents on. And then we have those cloud-based services for storage. It's all up to your preference, but applications, web-based applications or services like Google Drive, OneDrive by Microsoft, or iCloud. I know with a Google account, if you have a Google email account, you'll have access to Google Drive, and you have 15 gigabytes of free storage space. Take that with a grain of salt, but you can store things there. Also, the OneDrive by Microsoft and iCloud, very similar. And last, that's setting up a dedicated hard drive to have a copy of your system's image. So for all those Windows users here, if you access your settings menu under update security, and then backup, you can make that system image backup that you could pull from later on if your computer is ever compromised by a threat. Maybe it's a malware or something like that, and you need to revert back to the latest version of your operating system where it was working perfectly. If you have that system image, you'll be well prepared for any kind of curveball that comes your way in terms of cyber security threats. And with Apple, if you're an Apple user, they offer an application called Time Machine. And Time Machine will sync to a dedicated backup drive or external hard drive that will automatically, there's some user customization that you can set for the Time Machine to automatically back up your system image every so often. Maybe that's every 24 hours, or maybe it's a longer duration. But if you have important things on your computer and you don't have any backup system in place, it's definitely time to start thinking about that, especially being Cybersecurity Awareness Month. A little bit of time right now, setting up your own, securing your files will go a long way, because like I said, 10 years ago when I lost everything, I had no backup method and I lost everything, and it was kind of a pain, and all the files that I spent time working on, I had to redo if I wanted to see those through. So at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Kaja, and Kaja will tell us about antivirus software.
Hey everybody, there's a question in the chat, is it really safer to use incognito? My understanding is that it's good for, if you don't want it to track what you're writing in your computer. Like if I'm going to my search bar and I'm looking for really pretty flowers and I don't want people to see that I've searched for really pretty flowers, then, it's good for something like that, just protecting my activity on my actual computer. Unfortunately, for anything more than that, it doesn't make it that much more secure, and it doesn't mean your internet service provider can't track you or other things can't track you. It just means it won't record what you're doing on your computer. So yeah, it does have its uses, but it is not super secure catch-all protection when you're surfing the internet. Hope that answers your question.
I would say that Google can still track what you're doing in incognito mode.
Oh yeah, Google knows what you're up to.
Yep.
Kaja, there was one more question that we could try to address. I'm going to give my 2 cents, and then maybe Debbie and Kaja can chime in also. And that's from, I think it's from, okay, so I see. Kaja, maybe you did answer it? Does the reformat?
In the chat, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's been answered. I take that back.
And then Google will talk. Sorry, David will talk about VPNs in a bit, and he's a bit more of an expert than me, so I'll let him riff on that in a little bit. Just real quickly about antivirus software, there are far too many for us to kind of go down the pipeline. So we're just going to cover real briefly what things you want to consider when you're looking at antivirus software, because different antivirus services suit different needs. You might want to consider cost. Generally, there are a lot of good free ones, but the ones you pay for might be a little bit more convenient, or they might have special features that you particularly need. Things like speed. Some of these antivirus suites, for lack of a better word, they have the option to do a quick scan on your email or a quick scan on a download that you're about to download so you can verify it. If you're always downloading things, or you're always getting, you're talking to outside clients in your home business or something like that, it might be worth getting features like that, and you might want to either pay for or find a free service that does something like a quick scan that just generally moves faster. You also might be interested in multi-device support. You might be switching between a lot of different devices, and that might be very important to you, so you want to find one that has that option. Size, just the size of it on your computer. Some of these antivirus systems or software take up a lot of space, and if you have a computer that doesn't have a lot of extra room, they can even slow you down, or they just have so many features that they're always blocking things that you didn't intend to have blocked. So sometimes it's good having a relatively simple antivirus software so that you can actually control what you want it to protect you from. Just also considering, I mentioned earlier, risky behavior, just about, I'm always, maybe you love to download video game ROMs from random websites, and, safety be darned. So maybe you want to get a really, really powerful antivirus software where you can always scan things. There's options like that. Email download scans, I kind of mentioned that before, but that option can be helpful, whether it's a speed scan or a more in-depth scan that goes through every single email versus just looking for something that looks bad. And of course, there's always ratings. You can go, I particularly like a PC Magazine, which you can access through our Overdrive app or the Libby app. Consumer reports, which you can access through with your 29041 library card. You can access consumer reports through Flipster and your library card. And there's just a few other places, but those are the two I like to use when I'm looking at ratings for software or computers. It looks like we might have some questions here. And yeah, before I transition to David. Oh, yeah, David answered that. Great. Thank you, David. I'm just going to pass it on to David. He's going to talk about VPNs for us.
All right, so I'll try to make it quick. Virtual private networks, as I was on my quest to learn more about cybersecurity, VPN kept coming up, and I learned a lot from my colleague Debbie Huey about VPNs. But VPN, virtual private network, it will provide you with an extra layer of encryption and security. So if you're on a public Wi-Fi connection, if you purchased a VPN through a reputable VPN provider, you'd have that extra layer of security, and you wouldn't have to worry about the infrastructure of Wi-Fi that's being supplied to you, if it's outdated or not, because you're taking it upon yourself to make sure that you have that extra layer of encryption with a virtual private network. Now, there are some thoughts as to VPNs not being a kind of a fix-all for cybersecurity. And according to a 2021 article by How to Geek, things that it just mentions a VPN reroutes your internet traffic through one of the VPN company's own servers and encrypts that new connection. So that when you have access to a VPN provider often has servers strategically placed around the world. So instead of, let's say I lived in the city of Alameda and I had maybe an internet service through Comcast, or I was just at the Starbucks or something like that. Instead of, while I'm browsing the internet from Alameda at a Starbucks, if someone were to be snooping in, if I had my VPN, I could tunnel myself to one of the VPN servers in maybe Europe, maybe it's in England or something like that. That way, it doesn't make it seem like I'm right there and I'm in Alameda. I'm in a different location according to my, because my VPN's tunneling me there, and I have that extra layer of encryption that the VPN is providing. If you'd like to learn more about a VPN, there are some really good YouTube channels that you can learn more about good reputable VPNs. You can also do just a general search for reputable VPNs, but there's a great channel that I learned a lot from. I'll put it in the chat, but the channel on YouTube is called VPN Pro, and the host goes into detail as to why certain VPNs you'll want to look into having a paid VPN versus a free VPN, and some more of the benefits that come with using a VPN. So that's just something to definitely consider as a line of defense when you're out and about and you need some extra security. Next, we're going to go to, we'll hand it off to Debbie. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, David. Next up, we're going to quickly talk about multi-factor authentication. And so what is multi-factor authentication? It's a way of, logging into an account. So oftentimes, many accounts will only use one factor of authentication, which would just be your password. Enter your password, you're in. What multi-factor authentication is, it kind of prevents a, say a hacker from being able to access your account. So for example, if a hacker has a password, has your password to a certain account, then they can get in. But if you have multi-factor authentication, that means they need a second layer or another layer of authentication. So let's talk about the different kinds of authentication here. There's who you are, what you have, and what you know. So let's go with who you are. So one type of authentication can be, it relates to you. So for example, your fingerprint, or it could be your face. If you're like using a newer iPhone and you use your face to log into your phone or to unlock it. Or it could be, like in the movies, an eyeball scanner, to get into your office or whatnot. So you're using biological effects to authenticate yourself. The second type is what you have. So this could be a special kind of key fob that has a special code that you need to log in addition to your password. Or it could be another type of key fob that you physically plug into your laptop or your computer. Or it could be your cell phone, which would maybe have your a special 6-digit code. So oftentimes, you'll get a text message with a 6-digit code, and you need that to relog into an account. That's what you have, because you need your cell phone in order to get that code. And then the third type is what you know. So what is it you know? You know your password. So that's something that only you should know. Or another type is like the security questions that they ask you. What was the name of your first pet, or your mother's maiden name? Those are things that only you should know. So with multi-factor authentication, again, most of the time password is one of the forms of authentication. So that's what you know. So fulfills that. And then you need just one more. So for example, who you are. Maybe it needs your fingerprint. So it's highly recommended to use multi-factor authentication if that is an option for you on any account. So again, because like if say a hacker gets a hold of your password, they're not going to have your cell phone, or they're not going to have your face or your fingerprint. So in theory, then they wouldn't be able to log into your account at all. This is going back to David for ad blockers.
Okay, I'll try to make this portion short and sweet. And I do have to highly advocate for multi-factor authentication, just because, like Debbie said, what's the odds that someone's going to have 2 different factors of authentication that belong to you, right? They might have your password, but will they have your cell phone that's getting the text message with that 6-digit code? Probably not. So something that's well worth looking into. Okay, so ad blockers real quick. When you're using a web browser, certain websites that you visit could be tracking what you're looking at, and those trackers could go and follow you from website to website, collecting the information that you are seeing. So some ways to go around this, some free ways, are to install some browser extensions that will stop those trackers in their tracks and also help you get rid of seeing targeted advertisements. So 2 that I learned about from Blake Carver, they're both listed here. We have uBlock Origin and Privacy Badger. I use them together in Chrome, and I think I also use them together in Brave. So some of the pros, I'm able to open up the browser extension, and if I wanted to see what's going on under the hood, I could see what it's blocking, what it's actively doing. And one of the great perks is I'm no longer seeing those targeted advertisements when I'm visiting, a website. Also, I noticed when I'm on YouTube, the advertisements that you'll see before a video, they have been gone. So it's a very quick install, and it gives you a tiny bit of a tiny bit more user privacy when you're surfing the web. Something to look into that can easily enhance your experience and provide an extra layer of safety. With that being said, I'm going to hand it right back to Mr. Kaja. Thank you, Kaja.
Thank you, David. All right. Can't see my face. There we are. So what are you going to do if you get hacked? Well, first, let's look at some signs that you have been hacked. How do you know? One way you can tell is your browser goes rogue. Basically, your browser is doing stuff while you're not touching it or not controlling it. Probably means that the attacker has remote access and they're trying to do something. You just want to shut down that computer as quickly as possible any way you can. Sometimes you just need to pull the plug. People receive fraudulent invitations or emails from you. Basically, if your friends are asking you why you keep asking them for money, why they're asking for information that you already know, just suspicious interactions that didn't come from you, you might want to start changing your passwords and checking to see if anyone's used your account, because they might be using your information to access your contacts. So if people are reaching out to you, asking why you sent them weird pictures, that might be a sign you've been hacked. Your password's mysteriously changed. You know that password. You've been using it for a year. You enter it successfully the first time, every single time. Suddenly, it doesn't work. You've tried it 4 times on 3 different browsers, and it is just not accessing. There's a chance that someone has jumped into your account and changed your password already. You might need to contact the people who are in control of the account, or see how you can get control of that particular account again. Software materializes on your computer. So you see something, you load up that desktop and you see something, an icon on your desktop that you've never seen before for a software that doesn't really make sense. Or maybe you see a bunch of new extensions on your browser that you've never really ever added. That can be a sign that someone is, using your stuff. The cursor flies solo. I love that phrasing, but that's kind of another example of remote access. Somebody's taking control of your computer and the cursor starts moving around as if it's possessed by a ghost. Your shields are up and your shields are down, they won't come up. For some reason, your antivirus software is down and you had it up, you had everything active, but everything's turned off. Maybe, people, if I'm an attacker and I get access to your system, the first thing I'm gonna try to do is turn off your security, right? So it'll make it easier for me to get access to your other things. So that means you should take action immediately. Make sure that you kind of turn those on. Make sure you check to see if you're hacked, or if you're not sure what to do and you can't see what's going on, it might be good to just kind of turn off your devices so you can make sure that no one can use your computer or enter it. If your own systems tell you so, sometimes we get warnings, and yes, sometimes they are false, or sometimes that Norton antivirus is jumping the gun. But take it seriously. Just take a look. If it's telling you, hey, we're seeing something weird here, try and see what's going on, read the warning messages, and if you see something suspicious, maybe delete them or change your passwords, even if it's inconvenient, just to make sure and cover your assets. Yeah, so those are some signs that you could be dealing with an attack. And one of the best things to do is just to turn off your computer and to change your passwords. Those are the 2 things that are always good if you suspect that you're being attacked. The other thing you can do is check account details. See kind of, a bank account is a great example. If there are transactions that don't make sense to you, that you don't recognize, you need to change the password and then report that and call the bank immediately. It's always good to report these things as early as possible. And it won't always help because they need investigative evidence to go on, but you can report these things to the FBI. And this link that we'll provide in the chat in a second is a great example of a place you can report it to. They also have options in your email. You can report suspicious emails. If you right click, often in an email service, there'll be an option to report or block the sender. So that's an action you can take as well. And remember, cut the power to that computer if you're being hacked. It's one of the most effective ways. Oh, thanks, Debbie. And yeah, this is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. David, did you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure. So CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, if you visit their website, and we have it listed up here, and we'll try to get that in the chat for you too, they have some share outs about Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and I thought it was kind of advantageous just to take a look to see what at the top level of cybersecurity in our nation, what's going on and what they have to share. They definitely are experts in the field, and you can go check out their website to learn more about Cybersecurity Awareness Month and what they're promoting. think that's it. I think we're going to be transitioning to Q&A. So if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask aloud or put in the chat, I know my colleagues and I will be here for a few more minutes to hang out. And we will be airing this on YouTube. You'll find it on our YouTube channel if you'd like to rewatch at a later time. And sorry for the library announcement interruption that came in. It's getting close to closing time here. You know, and also in the chat, if you want to share any kind of best practices that you have in terms of cybersecurity and what's worked with you, please feel free to do so, or even mention it out loud.
I think it was nice that somebody mentioned like DuckDuckGo, or they're asking for safer browsers. I put it in the chat, but some that that we've found to have more of a good reputation for privacy. They're Brave. There's one that's called Brave, and then there's another one called Firefox. Probably most people have heard of Firefox, but those are two that have a really good reputation for keeping your information private. But again, use that uBlock origin and privacy badger. Now we have announcements. I don't know if you can hear. Use those extensions, and those can be really helpful.
Okay. Sorry, the announcement was on. That's why we weren't answering the questions. Someone is asking, is there anything we can do about spam text messages? One thing I do, I always just, as soon as I get spam, I block the address sending it. That's like the first thing I always do. David also mentioned the ad blockers, and a lot of the antivirus do have kind of anti-spam options on them, but just always kind of adding them to your bad sender list really helps. Debbie or David, do you have any ways that you manage spam?
I always just mark them as junk, really, just mark them as junk so that they're kind of reported. That's what I do.
Yeah, I know some of the email providers have, I think you mentioned this already, but they have the block sender list. So in like Debbie mentioned, mark as junk has been helpful. And I was just looking, there was a question about those key fobs, where you can get them for multi-factor authentication. I'm seeing some on Amazon.com. You could take a look there. And I would definitely say, I couldn't, based on my experience, I can't recommend one over the other. So I'd say do your research leading into it. I will say I do have a security key fob for an application that I use at home. It manages my licenses. So I have a audio editing software called Pro Tools, and there's a lot of third-party softwares that work within that umbrella software called Pro Tools that you have to pay for. And when you buy it, you get a license, and those licenses are stored on my key fob. It's called an iLock. And as long as my iLock's plugged in within that software, I can open all the third-party software I paid for as long as that iLock is plugged in. So that's just like one area of a broad, range of computer applications. But I'm sure, you can find some good feedback on security keys that could be purchased and combined with applications on your computer.
If you do have some time, Kaja did put in the link for our survey for Rate This Event. You can let us know what you thought of it, and also give us any feedback that would be helpful. Also, it could be a good opportunity for you to let us know what kind of future Tech Cafe classes you'd like to see in the future, because we haven't done a Tech Cafe in a while, and we'd love to bring it back. But we want to hear from you to see what kind of subjects you want to, see in the future. So go ahead and, fill out that survey, and then you can let us know what you want to see in the future. Does anybody else have any more questions? You can either say it out loud or you can put it in the chat.
All right, so I think we'll hang out for another 1 or 2 minutes, and then we will start closing up the meeting space. We want to thank everyone for coming, but so we'll have another minute or two to wait for any kind of questions before we start closing this out. And thank you all again for coming.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. This has been fun to share, and your questions were actually really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And in the feedback, yeah, any feedback you could give us about what you're wondering, or the kind of subjects, just general technology subjects that you want to know about, or any subject really. That always helps us know what to do when we come up with new programs. So thank you.
Okay, I guess nobody has any more questions. So thank you all for joining us today. It was great. I'm happy to see a lot of familiar faces too. And also, yeah, just let us know what you want to hear next. And we hope to see you at a future session. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Shu.